This is part 2 of a series on the 2017 UK general election, which will give a brief overview on the issues surrounding Brexit, the UK's exit from the European Union, and follow up with the policies proposed by each party to address them. On the 23rd of June 2016, the UK held a referendum on its membership of the European Union. By a narrow but decisive margin, the UK voted to leave the EU, but members of Parliament have strong disagreements over what the UK's relationship with the EU should be. Central issues here are international trade and the fate of European legislation. Regarding trade, this is the single market, which is a free trade zone within the EU to guarantee the free movement of goods, capital, services and labour between the member states. And this is the customs union, which is an agreement allowing several non-EU countries to benefit from free trade with the single market. A precondition for membership of the single market is adherence to the free movement of goods, capital, services and labour, which means no immigration restrictions on EU citizens. And a precondition for participation in the customs union is that the European Commission negotiates international trade deals on behalf of the whole trade bloc, meaning the UK wouldn't be able to negotiate international trade deals for itself. However, about half of the UK's trade is with the EU, and leaving without a deal would cause automatic and fairly catastrophic tariffs to go up on UK goods and services. This includes exports, imports and financial services, and these barriers are high enough that a number of banks, airlines, science and tech industries are very likely to relocate to Europe in the event that a deal can't be reached. Regarding EU legislation, there are 5 classes of EU law: treaties, directives, regulations, decisions, and decisions of the Court of Justice of the European Union. And over the last 40 years, UK law has become dependent on these laws as a legal framework, so abruptly removing them would cause problems. The government has proposed a Great Repeal Bill, which will be used to convert all EU law into UK domestic law. Then further legislation will be passed to, quote, amend, repeal or improve these laws as necessary. However, there are 2 classes of UK law: primary legislation, which must be enacted by at least 3 votes in both Houses of Parliament followed by royal assent, and secondary legislation, which is enacted through executive power without the consent of Parliament. The Great Repeal Bill is itself primary legislation, but it would classify the majority of EU laws as secondary legislation, thus giving the government broad authority to amend, repeal or improve these laws without a vote in Parliament. Since some estimates of how much UK legislation originates from the EU approach 50%, the Great Repeal Bill would give the government unprecedented and arguably undemocratic power over the UK's legislative landscape. So how do the parties compare on Brexit policy? The Conservatives say no to a second EU referendum, but yes to a vote in Parliament on the final Brexit deal. In a reversal from their 2015 manifesto, they wish to leave both the single market and the customs union, negotiating a new agreement under the principle that no deal is better than a bad deal. They want to convert EU law into UK law through a Great Repeal Bill, then amend, repeal or improve these laws to an unspecified degree. The Conservatives will not commit to guaranteeing the right of EU nationals to remain in the UK. The Green Party wishes to hold a ratification referendum on the terms of the final Brexit deal, with the option of staying in the EU being on the ballot. They wish to remain in the single market and the customs union and strongly oppose leaving the EU without a deal. They would scrap the Great Repeal Bill and replace it with an EU Rights and Protections Bill, which would notably keep European environmental law enforceable in the UK and guarantee the right for EU nationals to remain in the UK. Labour state that they accept the referendum results but do not rule out a second referendum to ratify the final deal. They wish to remain in the single market and customs union and would reject no deal as an acceptable outcome, but would keep leaving the single market on the table during negotiations. The Great Repeal Bill would be replaced with an EU Rights and Protections Bill that would prevent the government from making changes to workers' rights or environmental protections. They would also guarantee the right for EU nationals to remain in the UK. The Liberal Democrats would hold a referendum on the final Brexit deal with the option of staying in the EU being on the ballot. They would negotiate to stay in the single market and customs union and oppose the Great Repeal Bill, instead preferring to devolve EU laws to England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. And they would guarantee the right for EU nationals to remain in the UK and reform the requirements for obtaining permanent residence and UK citizenship. Plaid Cymru would not seek a second EU referendum, stating that they accept that the people of Wales voted to leave the EU. They wish to stay in the single market to protect Welsh exports and strongly oppose the Great Repeal Bill, calling it a great power grab by the government. They would guarantee the rights of all EU nationals currently living and working in Wales. The Scottish National Party would hold an independence referendum when the terms of the final Brexit deal are known, to give Scottish voters the choice of rejecting the deal and joining the EU as an independent country. They wish to remain in the single market and warn that the Scottish Parliament may seek to block the Great Repeal Bill by withdrawing its consent, and they say that if the UK government does not guarantee the right for permanent residence of EU nationals, they will seek devolved immigration powers to do so through the the Scottish Parliament. The UK Independence Party say no to a second EU referendum. They want a no-compromise Brexit, leaving both the single market and the customs union. They oppose the Great Repeal Bill because they reject the legitimacy of any EU law. UKIP would guarantee the right for EU nationals to remain, but only if they entered prior to March 29th. Thank you to the following patrons who supported this video. If you'd like to contribute, please check out the link and consider donating $1 or more toward the production of future content. The next video in this series will take a look at where the parties stand on the NHS, Britain's National Health Service.